The sales robots have taken over, and they're decimating deals left and right, destroying them right in their tracks. On the AI for Sales podcast, our mission is to empower everyday sellers to embrace AI superpowers to build new bridges and crush quota. Dr. Joel Abon said it best in the AI for Sales book. In sales, time kills deals. In AI for Sales, AI kills time. Join our hosts as we learn from the C-suite of the world's fastest growing companies about how you can leverage AI today to transform your sales revenue engine while being the best version of you.
Welcome back to another AI for Sales podcast. I am excited to be here. It's probably been a few weeks since we've talked to someone on the show, and looking forward to digging in today. We've got Peter Voss, who is the CEO and chief scientist of Aigo.ai. It's Aigo, Aigo.ai. So check it out. We're talking about chatbots with a brain. So I knew this day would come. I've been to the Philippines. I've managed large call center chat teams and all over planet Earth. And I'm excited to dig into this conversation today. Peter, welcome to the show.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Well, I believe it was Chris Decker that made the introduction. So anyone Chris says I should talk to, I talk to. He runs a lot of very high-end podcasts, including ours. And we're excited to be partnered with Creator Spark and Salescast to produce this podcast. So, Peter, before we kind of dig into your use of AI and how you're leveraging it for your customers, I'd like to help us connect with yourself. You mentioned you moved from Los Angeles to Austin recently. What was, if we go back even further than LA, what was your thing when you were a kid? What'd you love to do? What was kind of your obsession and passion as a child?
Well, I don't know if I want to go back that far as a child, but if I go back even 25 years, I can tell you what my passion was then and what it is now. And that is AI, to build machines that can think, learn, and reason the way humans do. And that has been, all-consuming passion for the last 25 years. As a kid, I was interested in electronics and so on, but I think the fire really started burning, when I realized that we can actually build machines that can, help the human condition, help humans to flourish by using artificial intelligence.
I love it. There was just a 60 Minutes episode with, quote unquote, the grandfather of AI. I don't know how he assumed that term, but very interesting dialogue. His concern around AI was, could AI take over? Because certainly I'm seeing it in the sales space that, it just keeps moving up the food chain. It can write a great email. AI can respond to emails, chat, very quickly moving into the telephone conversation side of the house. So definitely interesting. What do you think from if we go 30,000 foot view, Peter, and just look at AI in general, what are you most excited about AI being able to solve in your lifetime?
So, I've personally been involved in what is called cognitive AI, and that is really to build machines that can think and learn and reason the way humans do. Now, we're not there yet, and currently the focus is all on statistical AI, which is a very different approach. Statistical AI and, now generative AI, which is really just an outgrowth of statistical, really starts with the idea that, hey, we have a lot of data, we have a lot of computing power, and we can actually build models from that. Okay, they're very expensive to build, like $100 million to build that model with 1 trillion pieces of information in it. And that's what everybody's doing. But I think the real action and the real excitement is in cognitive AI and building machines where your starting point is, what does intelligence require? And, it requires that you can deeply understand what's going on, that you can learn interactively, that you can think about your own thinking. That's a uniquely human ability that we have metacognition. We can actually sort of control. We are aware of what we're thinking about and say, does this make sense? Is this what I want to pursue? So it's that kind of approach. Now, once that is fully developed, this cognitive AI approach, I could mentioned three different categories that I'm very excited about. The first one is having AI scientists. Imagine training up one AI, human level AI, to be a cancer researcher. You can now make 1 million copies of that, and you have 1 million cancer researchers chipping away at the problem. And you take this for any disease that we have, the kind of progress that we can make to really improve the human condition. The second category is just dramatically reducing the cost of goods and services by automation, and the wealth that'll create for humanity is, it's basically a lot of the cost, as you know, in goods and services is human labor. And so we'll be, dramatically be able to reduce that. And the third category is that I'm actually most excited about is what I call a personal assistant. In fact, it should really be called a personal assistant, because there are three different aspects of personal that are really important here. The first one is you own it. It's yours. It serves your agenda. Not like Siri or Alexa that serve some mega corporations' agenda. The second thing is it's hyper personalized to you, so that it learns your individual preferences, history, who you interact with, and so on. And the third personal is the one of privacy, that you control what it shares with whom. Certain things you share with your spouse, other things you share with your co-workers, and some things you share with Amazon. So it's those three categories. It's not exhaustive, but those. This is what really makes me excited about the prospect of a real AI that we'll have in the future, the near future.
Well, in 150 plus guests, I asked that question every time, and I was always waiting for somebody to answer the question around solving disease and cancer, and as you said, chipping away at it. So I'm pleased that you're thinking along those lines, because it's, if you can duplicate, 1 million of that person's intellect and thinking and big data analysis, man, I think we can get there sooner than later in today's world.
Absolutely.
So that's very exciting. The other thing I'm started is in a neuro-linguistic programming course, NLP. And I'm sure you're familiar with that, and just digging into how the mind puts things together, the models that it creates, and then the memories and the meaning of the memory and all of those kinds of things. And I think that those are the things AI will be able to look into and deeply understand to bring this to people.
Yeah. If you, that personal assistant that I talk about also can really be a coach for you. It can help you, so if you suffer from depression, or there's some improvements you want to make, this is what NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, tries to do, is to help you overcome phobias or, bad memories, and to turn them into positive things. So having this hyper-personalized AI coach to help you, help train you yourself. It's like having an angel on your shoulder,
Yeah, that's right. Well, talk to me about the chatbots, because I think of some of the early chatbots, and, you were cool if you put a chat code on your site, and then, almost every site was able to then do it because the cost was there, but it would require a human managing it. And so it wasn't actually that low of cost. And if you put the little code on your site and nobody was there to manage it, then, all it is a collection mechanism. But obviously the chat in today's world has gotten much more complex and integrated and can look across all different data sets. Talk to us about how does AI play a role in adding a brain to the chatbots that you deploy for customers?
Right. So the integration, getting something to work that really works well, that can use all of the the APIs, the information you have in your back office systems and so on, to have all of the business rules, to have the way you like to present your company, is still a lot of work. And until we get to, the sort of human level AI that I'm talking about, where the AIs can really configure themselves, learn how to configure themselves and ask questions, so sort of then talk to the marketing department and say, well, how would you like me to respond to that? But we're not there yet. At the moment, it does require still quite a lot of human involvement to understand what the customer wants, how their APIs work, and to then train the system specifically, or to set up the system specifically for that. Now, the difference in our approach, why we call it a chatbot with a brain, and where the brain actually helps a lot, is that the brain gives the system inherently the ability to remember what was said earlier in the conversation, what was said in previous conversations with this particular customer, and to reason about it, to use context, to have a deep understanding of the language, not just keyword understanding. Because all of the chatbots out there that don't have a brain, which is pretty much every chatbot, are actually very, very primitive technology that's been around for like 30 years. Essentially, they consist of two parts. The one part is a categorizer. So if you say blah, 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 weather, oh, you want the weather. And if you say, I hate Uber, don't ever give me Uber again, oh, you want Uber, it'll trigger the Uber app, And then the second part of it is somebody writes essentially a flow chart of, okay, where do you want to go? How many people are going? Do you want Uber X? And it's, basically you're constrained within that flow chart. And this is why most IVRs, automatic speech, and most chatbots are very frustrating, because, they don't remember what you said earlier. They don't really have a deep understanding. They don't use context. So this is where the brain helps. So to put it concretely, one of our big clients is a 1-800-Flowers group of companies, which is Harry and David, Popcorn Factory, and so on. And they use our system very successfully as a hyper-personalized concierge service, where the system learns for each individual one, each one of their 20 million customers, of who they buy gifts for, what the relationship is, what the occasion is, what kind of gifts they like, and it can utilize that information. But you really require a brain to have that, deeper understanding, and not just go through a flow chart step by step.
I can definitely align with the frustration, because I work with a data company that does emailing and data, and I go to the chat and I asked the question maybe a month ago, hey, for some reason, this app is copying my personal email address. Can you please help me fix it? And I go into the chat, and it gives me like 5 articles that one of them may have a little bit to do with the answer to that question, but not really. So finally, I have to click through about 10 different ways to chat with someone. And then it emails their team, and then one of the 3 people come in. And we go through a thread, and basically they give me the same article, which is the 1 in the 5 that was only half correct. But right. We at least got somewhere where he said, hey, let's troubleshoot this. This isn't happening from our app. Got it. So now I want to go back and ask the question. And as you would expect, it's the same IVR tree. Here's the 5 articles. And then, hey, let me go back to a person. Hey, Microsoft told me it was your app. It's not right. Microsoft. And it's just, it's so frustrating. I think because now that people are using generative AI, we think that level of, once I have the conversation with the generative AI, it now knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, not at all.
And
yeah,
none
not
of the chats have any idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah. No, generative AI, can be good for surfacing. It's like a search on steroids, that it can give you bullet points of what it might be, but you're not going to have an ongoing conversation that it actually remembers previous conversations or really has deep understanding. Also, it's not going to be hooked up to APIs, specifically to know like your account details and so on. It's just not the right technology for giving, some complex customer service where you need to be able to rely on what it's doing. As long as there's a human in the loop to sort of say, well, yeah, this looks right, or no, this, let me change my prompt, let me try something else. It can be extremely useful, but not if you're really relying on the system It's called generative AI, GPT, generative pre-trained transformers. Generative, it makes up stuff. That's literally what it means.
Yes.
And pre-trained means it was trained at the factory. It can't actually learn properly, when you use it. So, very exciting technology and good for creative thinking and helping you summarize stuff and write poems and stuff like that, but not for industry strength kind of troubleshooting or things that will update your backend system.
So, tangential question. 4 or 5 years ago, I went to New Jersey to the Amazon Voice Conference. And I remember there was one session where a speaker was supposed to be talking about how the conversation intelligence can sit on top of a chatbot, because if you can build the chatbot, then of course you can make it into a conversation powered by AI. And that person didn't show up for his talk that day. So it's kind of interesting. But fast forward 4 or 5 years later, and now there's a handful of companies who are building conversation intelligence on top of chatbots. What are your thoughts on what's required to make one of those conversation AIs actually work and meaningful, and a value add for the company as well as the customer? I think a lot of the core of what we're talking about here of cognitive capability will make the phone conversation way more effective than just following an IVR, and which is kind of where we are now.
Yeah, absolutely. The simple answer is the chatbot needs a brain. And, unfortunately, they're not, fortunately for our company, but unfortunately for the users out there, what pretty much everybody is using to build chatbots are exactly the flowcharty type programs. They now try to throw in large language models, GPT, but while it makes discovery and natural language understanding easier, so the categorization part of it, when you input something, it can take a wider range of things. It doesn't at all solve the problem of understanding what steps you need to go through to actually solve a customer's problem.
Mm-hmm.
That requires deep understanding. It requires memory. It requires reasoning. It requires using context. And you really need cognitive AI for that. And unfortunately, very few companies are working on that because statistical approaches have sucked all of the oxygen out of the air. It's been so incredibly successful just throwing more data at it. And the big companies, that's what they have. They have a lot of data. They have a lot of computing power. They can afford to build models that cost $100 million. So that's a hammer they've got. So everything looks like a nail. But it's basically all the VC money. If you want to have an article published in academia, if you want to do a PhD, if you want to earn the big bucks, it's all about statistical AI. But the tide is turning because I think people are realizing that statistical approaches are simply not going to get us to truly intelligent systems. And even people like Sam Altman quite clearly say that. They say large language models are not going to get us to AGI or to really true human level AI.
My son is finishing his final year at Colorado School of Mines in computer science and starting to take a few AI courses. And if I recall correctly, they're very statistical based, as you would expect. So I'll have to talk to him for his final semester and see if there's a cognitive AI course that he could enroll in.
Be good. 15, 20 years ago, cognitive AI was was taught in a lot more universities, but as I say, the statistical approaches have just dominated over the last 15 years. For good reason, because they have been very successful, but it's not ultimately the path to having truly intelligent systems.
Okay. If AI didn't exist, does your company exist? Probably doing something different.
Well, yes. If we didn't have the brain that we've developed in our company over the last 20 years, we would be doing our damnedest to create a good conversational AI within the limitations of using flowcharts and things, I imagine, or I might be doing something completely different.
Yeah, that's right.
um,
I met with
my previous, my first big company was, I actually developed an ERP software system. So, I have a long history in sort of accounting and business administration systems, job costing, payroll, and all of that kind of stuff. So that was kind of fun, but AI is much, much more exciting.
I remember meeting with a CEO of a company who bought the code of a chatbot technology. And I think he said he paid $1.5 million for it or so. Mm-hmm. And it was from Israeli intelligence is where it came from, because it was able to read not just the sentence, but make sense of an entire paragraph, is what I recall. And I remember even 8-10 years ago, he was telling me, Chad, this is where it needs to go. And it sounds like that's comes from the same line of thinking that you've built your code on top of, is that understanding of not just the sentence, but the full paragraph.
Yeah, exactly. So what has happened to his company?
I looked him up about a year ago, and I don't know if he's doing that anymore. So maybe there's some code sitting out there. I tried to go program it. He goes, yeah, it's super easy. And I'm not a programmer or a developer.
Right.
So I went on a trip to Canada on a ski trip, and I sat in the lodge for an hour, and I was like, this is not drag and drop. It's not easy.
Well, it's hard. I mean, what we're trying to do is to build artificial intelligence that can, truly think and understand and learn, is hard. And, we have an excellent team working at it. And in fact, now with the excitement of ChatGPT, we feel there's a good environment for us to actually accelerate our development to get all the way to human level understanding. So we actually are increasing our development team. Currently, we have about 10 people on that, but we actually hoping now to expand that to about 100 people very rapidly.
Would you consider partnering with the company that's doing the conversation AI? Because I know of a couple, and one very particular in Florida that's on the path to go public, and I believe it's built on a generative AI model. I would think if they coupled their understanding of call center operations with your chat bot technology, I think that might be an interesting combination.
Yeah, well, always willing to talk to people. I do believe that generative AI is a road to nowhere as far as truly offering a customer service. We're seeing that everywhere where people try to implement it. Companies have raised a lot of money because of the hype of AI. But I'm not seeing actually any applications that go beyond sort of intelligent or semi-intelligent search.
I love what you just said, because I can see it. The hype cycle. There was one company who called me and said, "Hey, we want you to be a partner of ours and a reseller, and we're looking for 100 people like you that can do it because you have a very good network, et cetera, et cetera." I was like, all right, interesting. So I listened. It calls me and talks to me, and I was like, yeah, it's okay. It's average. Maybe there's a few customers out there in the world that could use this. But then they started saying how it's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and you need to put your money where your mouth is. They're looking for 100 people to buy into the hype cycle to resell this technology. And the money's not actually in the customers paying for the technology. The money's in the partners signing up and sending them a check for $100,000 for 100 partners.
Oh.
I was like,
wow. Okay. Sounds a bit like a pyramid, huh?
Sounds a lot like a pyramid to me. So I posted about that and said, hey, watch out for these guys because they'll steal your money. Interesting times. Last question is around the elephant in the room question, which is the impact of AI on labor. I have my own opinion about it and did a little bit of research about it, but you've been in and around the space for 25 years. What do you believe? What have you seen happen rather than guessing in terms of displacement?
Yeah, I mean, I believe it's one of those things where looking at the history is not necessarily going to inform you what happens in the future. People use the argument and said, oh, we've been hearing about how automation will, replace labor and shorten the work week. And, the opposite has happened. And, well, I think the reason for that is that people just want more and more out of life. I mean, if we look at, certainly in America, the amount of stuff and services that people have and take for granted is enormous, And then, of course, you have all of the major inefficiencies that you have in education and healthcare, for example, that are just sucking up, unlimited amounts of labor and effort and government as well. So we're not seeing that automation is really creating a shorter work week. But then the automation we have doesn't have real intelligence. So having truly intelligent systems that can by themselves learn to do any job that a human can do will change things dramatically. Now, then you turn that around and say, well, is that a bad thing or a good thing? Well, you can look at it both ways. Doesn't almost everyone you talk to want to win the lottery? I mean, people say, oh, I wish I could win the lottery, then I could just do whatever I want to do. Well, true AI or AGI, artificial general intelligence, is really like everyone winning the lottery. As I say, the cost of goods and services will come down dramatically, and it will really free up people tremendously to do more of the things that they want to do. Now, there will still be enormous, for the foreseeable future, there'll be enormous work that needs to be done is to help the rest of the world, for example, to reach the kind of quality of life that we have, and of course to improve life beyond that, get rid of diseases to the extent that we can, the ravages of aging and how that cripples people. So there's so much to be done, but it'll be much more optional for people of what they want to work on once we get to true human level AI.
Man, I love it. So you're extremely bullish is what I'm hearing on the AI in general as it continues. When do you see is utopia in 10 years, 50 years? When do we reach the end of the rainbow?
I always answer that question not in terms of years, but in terms of dollars. And I really believe that. It's basically, when will enough money flow into cognitive AI, the right approach to get to human level AI? At the moment, it's not getting funded, basically, that people don't understand it. It's not the train that everybody wants to jump on. It's at the moment, it's still very much the momentum is with statistical and generative AI. So I think it when that tide turns and the right kind of projects actually get funded, I think we can have human level AI in 5 years or so.
Interesting. Well, I've really enjoyed the intellectual conversation. I am excited to buy my next flowers on 1-800-Flowers because now I know I can have a conversation with a bot with a brain. So I'll be excited to do that. What a great conversation. We've been talking with Peter Voss, the CEO and chief scientist of Aigo.ai, AIGO.ai. And check it out. Love this conversation. Thank you so much for being here today, Peter.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, everybody. We'll catch you on the next AI for Sales podcast.
Hey, you made it this far in your AI for Sales journey. Want to augment your sales growth? First, leave us a review and then visit www.scalex.ai to claim your free strategy session today.